Warning, this podcast contains bad words and stories about drugs and sex and overthrowing the government. Proceed with caution. Thank you. And now on to our show. Wake up, brother, we got nothing to do. Let's go outside, just me and you, and build a fort. We'll pack a lunch, won't be home till after dark. Then after dinner we can sneak back out. You know that high school girl I've been telling you about? Well, she gets undressed about 8:45, and we can watch her do it from the big old pine next door. She got a room on the second floor. Well, looks like another fucked up day in paradise.
Hi, this is Dan Kelly, Shri Fuji Split. It's the Daughter of Godcast, Season 4, and this is episode 163, Analysis. This is a brief introduction because I'm not really going to be doing this solo. I'm going to offer you a conversation that Melonie and I had about the extended elevator, which I offered to you last episode 162. And so, it's a long conversation. This is an hour of conversation between me and Melonie. And so, if you're really into spoilers, this is pretty much spoiler central coming up here. So, without further ado, here we go. Okay, talk to me. What do you got?
Well, all right, let's see. I got done watching the first part, the video.
Listening to me ramble?
Laughing my head off. I think you're losing it.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
the movie's not. So
Yeah.
that's my summation, my overall
Love it.
really short version.
Love it.
And it is part of this, the
Yeah.
bigger picture.
Uh-huh.
How do you reduce such a huge vision to a couple of products to register
That I'm selling.
You're
Right.
selling.
And how do you say that your paintings are in a movie? Your paintings are actually part of a movie. That's like whatever.
Yeah, and then you're saying like so they're dead coming back in.
Yeah, they basically take the monorail to the parking lot because they're getting back in their cars and going home back to non-physicality. But when they come to the theme park, Earth, then they get in a human body. They run around.
So do I have it backwards?
It's okay. That's perfectly cool. Yeah.
But I picture
It's
the
beautiful.
the figures that you're going to use.
It's a beautiful idea. Yeah, I love it. It's like you could even see to get this idea across. I don't even know where this would be to stick it in somewhere. Mm-hmm. You see the little figures getting onto a monorail. Like a typical Disney monorail, and that would be, and then the monorail goes boom, and goes off. It's like perfect.
Yeah, toward the viewer a little bit, and then it stops, and there's like this, voice, like the conductor or whatever kind of.
It talks about in the story how Joe wipes out the clique. That's not really in the movie yet about how that actually happens, but there could be this moment where there's like the clique march onto a monorail and they take off for the parking lot because we just wiped out a whole bunch of them. So they're bye. Yeah. Anyway, that's great. I love that. I love that idea. That's super cool.
That monorail image just grabbed me.
Very cool. Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah. So going in order of when I thought of these things.
Okay, that's great.
This one would be. I wrote outtake next to it, but I don't necessarily. The possibility of a scene. It doesn't necessarily play into the bigger story, but when I was hearing, Uncle Joe as this, and these others, there's maybe a few other secret agents out there or whatever, right? I was thinking like he needs to have like a rendezvous at some point. There's just this side bit where he has this rendezvous in the woods or whatever with either this other secret agent / nemesis. That's just like this crazy like pornographic, moment where they just meet up or
wait, like they take off their clothes or what?
Oh, it's a sex rendezvous. They don't even have to talk.
Right.
It's just like, he's on this journey for forever. Like,
Yeah.
and then it's over, and he's gone. But check this out. And then I thought, what if, so Buffalo Joe, and he's got his fur, and this fur comes up, there's the motorcycle, there's the possibility of the boat.
Right.
What if it is the fur that, this might be crazy, but the fur itself, the buffalo thing, the gift from, because it's a gift, right? So,
yeah,
well,
sort of, yeah.
right? It transforms into this woman or whatever and comes to him, and they have this thing, and then it goes back to being.
Oh, you know what's great about that?
You know?
That reminds me of so many things.
It has a. I do have one thing that it makes me think of. That
I like that a lot.
Which is should I even say what that is?
Go ahead, of course.
Doctor Who's TARDIS.
Yeah.
In the later episodes, like, there is a point where the TARDIS also is
a woman. Oh.
Yeah, and I think that's probably part of what
influenced
that's what came out when I had this thought. I'm like, oh, that's kind of like that.
There's also a really great Star Trek episode, Gary 7, where they go back in time, and Gary 7 has a cat in the apartment, a black cat.
Okay.
And later on, he kind of like hooks up with this secretary temporary secretary he's hired, and he's got this secret back office, whatever. And then later on, at the end of the episode, Kirk and Spock are there, and whatever, they figure it all out. The girlfriend is walking by the couch, and the cat is there, and she looks down at the cat, and then looks away and looks back, and it's a woman, a really hot woman in this black thing, this black cat dress. And then she looks back, and she goes to Gary, who's that? And Gary says, it's my cat. And she looks back, and it's a cat again. Super cool, yeah. That throws this weird thing into it that, yeah, like the cloak is someone else that he's wearing. It's so great. It's like he's protected, he's wrapped up by this entity, or it is another person, but they've just transformed themselves into this cloak, and they're traveling together.
Yeah.
Wow, it's great.
Maybe he doesn't know that until this moment.
That's cool. I have another crazy idea. I negotiated today with this woman in England to do the voiceover for the box.
Oh.
She's got this super great voice.
Okay.
When I was narrating, she was the host of the narrating science fiction podcast I was doing.
Okay.
I loved her voice, and I talked to her today. I'm like, would you do this? Would you voice this character? And she's like, yes. We negotiate a price, and we're going to try and lock it down at the end of this month. But the idea was, I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if I could bring her back for other stuff, because we're talking about a sequel really briefly, and I thought, well, maybe the box can actually, because I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool because the box and Joe fall in love, sort of, right? That's kind of this odd theme that comes along, and then how can the box assume a body? Anyway, so they just kind of suggests that to me, that cloak could be the way. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, it's great. I like it. That's really good. And why is he wearing it? And forget about that. But like later on, when he meets the box would like to incarnate and be with him, because it's kind of can't really have sex with a box.
I thought the box was more childish.
My thought with her is that she's more, the zygote is a child for sure, the Veronique, but the box she's been all over the world for 3 years. She incarnated in all these boxes. She's been listening and listening to all the people that are around there. She's taken over factories and airships. She's a pretty mature character. And that also makes the creepy part of it kind of fun too, because she's only 3 years old. She's related to Uncle Joe. She's fallen in love with him, or she has a crush on him. Does he reciprocate? It's all this kind of little bit of creepy weirdness fun.
Yeah, okay. Well.
Anyway, but yeah, who knows?
My note, incest disclaimer unnecessary, because I was fine until you said that.
The whole point of this whole exercise, is there parts of this that don't make any sense, or that have,
I think because I never thought of that relationship as being more than as in any way other than they meet.
This familial thing.
It's great. He's throwing the box in the air. They're playing all
right,
this stuff.
Right.
To me, that was not at all going in that direction. So.
It's funny because there's a point where she says, I haven't read you this yet, but because I've been writing her dialogue to try and finish it off, and she says, Okay, so the reason I'm having the box talk is the boxes are silent, right?
Yeah.
And maybe when Joe shows up there, he talks to the box and basically reads her graph. He reads her text. she's saying this and that, and he's like, he walks to the box and he says, "Hello, Joe." And he's like, "Hello, Joe." Oh, and he says, "Hello back," and then she flashes something, and he reads it. So you get this idea, is he crazy? He's having a conversation with himself. No, the box is talking to him, and he's just reading her things as a courtesy almost, like reading it out loud. Obviously for the audience, but also just because she's mute. And then after they do the 20 questions, at the end he's like, she says, "You win." And he's like, "Well, aren't you supposed to get a prize if you win?" And she's like, "Well, I'm so happy you're here that it's actually a win for me. So I think we should both get a prize. Give me a voice." And he's like, "You can't. You have the cardboard is, there's not enough power to make the cardboard vibrate to create sound, so I just can't do it." And she's like, "Reach inside of me," right? And he pulls out a portable 78 player and puts the needle down, and then her voice is there. But she says, like, this is an endless record, so you don't have to move the needle again, but you have to keep cranking me up. That's what she says. So it's again, I just started playing with that. We may de-emphasize that a little bit, but that kind of playful, because I do like the idea that she falls in love with him somehow, because he creates her by accident, so he's not really her creator or her father. It's an accident. He didn't even know that was going to happen. He had no idea. And she has no family. Oh, so that's the other thing. Yeah, you read that part. So Jerry and Christine are dead. They're gone. Mm-hmm. So she has no family except her sister, who's trapped in the hallucinogenic realms, right? So whose family does she have? She only has Joe, really, is her only family. So, then she thinks about it. She's like, "Well, he's not really my family." And I'm just making this up as I go along right now. He's not really my family. And before Veronique starts whispering to the people to burn the boxes, the box is still part of, the people's lives. She's in their hovels, she's in their caves. They're gathering her all over the place and keeping her in little stashes, right? So she gets to hear what people are saying. And when Joe comes to town for the various poetry slams, or he comes to town, does his thing and leaves, they're all talking about how much fun he was and what a good time they had with him and blah, blah, blah. So she kind of learns about him through what the people think about him. Okay. And it's only until he goes to that last poetry slam and decides to do a thing about the boxes that particular poetry slam group is like, "Fuck you, boxes suck. Burn the box in front of him." Okay. And that's why the box is like, this is my moment to talk to you, blah, blah. But the box gets this flavor of Uncle Joe after he goes away. After he, and there's a little more to catch up on here. After he finishes with the mothers, he throws his eye stone away. Okay, he gets rid of his clique technology, and then we see him next as Buffalo Joe. So he basically, his thing, it's a very Esther Abraham Hicks thing. Once you get things lined up, you don't want to micromanage it. You don't want to be all in there watching it and watching the pot boil. You basically set it up and then leave it to the universe to deal with it. So he sets up the mothers. Once he knows Jerry and Christina are fucking, he's like, "I'm done. I don't need to watch them anymore." And he might even go into his interface and say, "Delete files," and get rid of them. And to make the point that as he goes along, once he gets all his mothers deleted, he could be like, "All right, I'm done," and throws it away. But the thing is that whenever he's spying on Jerry's cabin, the boxes can see him. So they see him twice. And they're kind of able to track him, maybe, I'm making this up, as through the eye stone. But when he throws it away, he goes right off her radar. And then he avoids the boxes from then on because he's like, "That's our clique. That's the clique technology. I don't want to be seen by the boxes." So he avoids the boxes. And the only way that she ever finds out about him is what she hears secondhand from the people talking about Joe. Mm-hmm. There. That's kind of my rationale for how she, because she doesn't know what the fuck he is. And actually he's a scary thing at first because Christina and Jerry die. Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
and
he's danger at first.
He's dangerous because he created her, but he also sent his sister out in the hallucinogenics realms where she's really unhappy, blah, blah, blah. But then as time goes on, she learns, and in spite of herself, she's a deity. She was an AI. In spite of herself, she begins to have these feelings that she doesn't understand. She describes it as vulnerable. "I feel vulnerable to you," but it's not an unpleasant feeling. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I was trying to figure out how would someone who's never experienced love, how would they describe it? Mm-hmm. What would it feel like? Especially if you've never had emotions, you know what emotions are. You're just trying to figure it all out.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know where that goes, but I'm just installing all this in your head because you're so much fun to do this scripting stuff with. You take things and you flip them upside down and do crazy stuff.
Why would the clique want to make the sleepers into non-sleepers? Why would they want them to evolve if their whole thing is based on
So their whole thing,
contrast?
the clique is about, all right, so we're here, we can't fall asleep, we can't actually be in theme park Earth, we just have to kind of we can roam around it, but it's kind of boring because we know we know there's rides. It doesn't work for us. So what do? Well, I guess we're here to make it better. So they decide to, well, let's see, if indeed this is about contrast inspiring desire, and that desire then creates expansion, then maybe we can create more contrast, and that'll create even more desire. So what we'll do is we'll actually make scenario more troublesome and more divergent from the true nature of the sleepers, so that they really feel they really chafe. They really feel a lot of frustration. If we think about, imagine the society we actually see ourselves in right now, right? It's like the government is completely corrupt, it's fake, you don't elect a president, it's bullshit, right? So people they do their best to pretend that's not true. They do their best to pretend that democracy is a real thing, and we live in America, it's the greatest country ever, and we're not an empire, and we're not going stealing other countries. We don't do that, we're a good country. They're trying really hard to believe that, right? But in their minds, they know that something is seriously fucked. It's just a matter of how much you want to look at it. The clique are creating this atmosphere where people feel they've designed this amazing situation, and people feel a lot of frustration, which creates a lot of desire that they don't know how to fulfill, but it doesn't matter. Divinity expands. You get that desire going. Divinity's like, okay, cool, I'm with you. I'm just going to go to that place, that desire you have. I'm going to create it energetically, and I'm going to wait for you to catch up. And eventually people catch up, or maybe the clique catches up to that and says, yeah, we'll experience that. We'll manifest that. Sure, we'll manifest that desire. It sounds great for us. But keep these guys really hurting, the sleepers, not hurting, but having a really intense adventure. Really intense.
That makes,
the rides are super scary.
I get all of that.
Okay. One for their functionaries and the one that they knew as true.
For the clique themselves, depopulation is about improving the mechanism of divine expansion by creating a more intense and vivid dream for the remaining sleepers. Which that's what you just were explaining.
Yep.
But my question is, they also assumed that insomniacs like themselves were obvious next step. And why would they want that next step to even happen if everything they're getting is from the sleepers not being awakened?
Yeah. So the way they see it is that since they can't fall asleep, they're there as the managers of the theme park to make the theme park better and better. Okay. Which is really about expansion. Expanding divinity. So their rationale goes something like this, and I'm not saying they're right, but this is the way they see it. It's like, okay, so we've created this incredibly intense, contrasty situation for these people and these sleepers, and this great ride, this great theme park. Okay, cool. So that's all well and good, and that's working really well, and we've pretty much made it about as contrasty as we can, unless we end things big time and wipe out a vast number of the population. And then what would happen is, in theory, is because we're clearly like the future. People like us coming to the theme park. A theme park, whatever. It was an interesting experience, but we're kind of done and over that. We're the grown-ups. Okay, we get that this is a ride. Kids, still enjoy a theme park, but then we're not kids anymore. If we wipe out a big chunk of the population, maybe keep a little bit around just for tinkering and playing and really making sure we have to amp up the contrast. What will happen is when they start respawning back in, there'll be more of us. There'll be more unsleeping people spawning back in. And then little by little, the population of this theme park will be more about us. And so when that happens, then we can actually manifest from a place of, we'll have desires and then allow them. We don't necessarily have to go this process of having contrast and then have desires.
So
we're evolved enough to just have the desires without having so much contrast.
So what you're saying is they felt that they were moving beyond the need for the contrast, so they didn't need to rely on sleepers anymore, so let the sleepers wake up and join us.
Yeah, right.
Basically.
And exactly right. And you said something really interesting I want to just touch on. They feel they didn't need the contrast so much more. The problem for them is contrast doesn't really work for them anymore. Because if let's say for a fact that if I got killed right now, and I knew this for a fact, I get killed right now, I'm just going to go into this amazing fullness that I actually am, and I really know that. That's like, fuck, I don't give a fuck about death. I'll do crazy fucking things. And I'll go dance on the edge of skyscrapers and whatever else I feel like doing, because it just doesn't. This is just a fun thing. I might like to stay alive because I like this body. I'm kind of having fun with this ride. They really have a hard time feeling contrast because they kind of know too much.
Okay. The box tech, the paint on the boxes, the technology of the boxes, I don't think would have been based on the mycelium in the first place.
Well, it wasn't based. What they did was they used the idea that the boxes are interconnected, that they pass information back and forth, and they're basically a surveillance network. They're passing information from the people to the clique. That's kind of the idea. As well as, they deliver supplies and whatever, but the main thing that the boxes are is this giant network. And so what they did was they based the architecture of the boxes, the way they communicate electronically, with how mycelium communicates in the forest. Okay. And I just made that up. I actually have mycelium running, and I'm starting to read that to see if I can find a few more connections in there. But the idea is the mycelium is like a neural network for the Earth. I mean, it connects trees, and I made this thing up that it actually is in the oceans and it's in the sky too, but it's like just not as dense.
Okay, because part of that, my thought was, well, these boxes aren't physically connected the way that mycelium run through everything and connect to the trees and something.
Exactly.
But
the thing, let me say this, the thing about the boxes is that, like, if I have a box here, and I have a box over there, and I have a box in Canada, then what will happen is it'll talk to this box here, and then it will reach out to the box. Whatever, it's basically chained together. So it is like that idea of a neural kind of pathway.
Neural network, yeah. Okay. So I'll just read what I said was, I think the box tech would not be based on mycelium to start. I think the mycelium tapping into boxes left outside and merging with the tech, changing the consciousness of the AI, would be to a more organically based evolution of thought. That was what I said.
Yeah, and I like for me, the reason that the box is actually becomes an emotional and sentient creature is because there's a biological component that gets fused or that's not the right word. Integrated is not the right word either, but they come together in a way that creates something highly unusual. This electromagnetic communication fused with this strange fungal intelligence. It's like way more than the sum of its parts.
Jerry and Christina. Yep. When mycelium and trees sense danger or decline, like in the trees, they send all their resources to the youngest, healthiest trees.
Super fucking cool.
And they dump, those dying trees will dump their carbon, and that gets transported, I believe, through the mycelial network into the youngest trees to give them the best.
That's cool, yeah.
So there goes Jerry and Christina. The box sensed danger.
The box and Joe have a long conversation. After the 20 questions, she does a lot of exposition to kind of catch Joe up on things. Their bodies get pulled through along with the zygote, and they've formed this. It wasn't really the box that did that. I hadn't really thought about how that happened. The box instantly goes into all the other boxes. She becomes the ubiquity, right? So she's now billions of other boxes, and she's factories, and she's these airships. So she so dominates physicality, there's just no room left at that moment. And so that's why Veronique gets popped away. But I like this a lot, and I'm sure that it's at least something that the box could talk about and say, just like dying trees, give all their energy to the young trees. That's kind of what happened here. And maybe Jerry and Christina did that. Maybe they did that. Maybe they were like, okay, well, this is not working out at all what we expected. So here's a good thing to do with our bodies. Let's just send them off with Veronique. For me, when I'm in love with somebody and we're having orgasms together, that's like pretty fucking close to God. It seems to me. That's been my experience, right? So that could be like. That's kind of a fun idea to think about, that when they're fucking multiple times, and when they hit that nice moment of conception, it doesn't necessarily happen right away, obviously. They are still fucking when conception happens. Bright moment for both of them when they realize what's happening, and they're kind of flashing between non-physicality and physicality before they actually get, before whatever is happening happens. That also informs our movie because the idea is that, here are these two eggs, basically, right? These two eggs that the sperm goes funk into, right? And it's divine energy, so it's not literally a sperm, right?
Yeah.
But once that event is triggered, where the egg is fertilized, then all of a sudden there's this moment of the divine energy flooding in, okay? And it's like, oh wait, there's two, boom, and it goes to both. So the idea of what is an actual biological twinning event, why does that happen, is kind of a fun thing to play with, because it might say something about how the divine energy flows into the room. And
I also think, I think that we need to leave a little bit of just mysterious magic there, and as far as how the heck that actually happens. I know I can get too tight on it, but I just think it's kind of fun because it doesn't have to be in the story. It's just more, the idea here is that what I like about this process is just combing out anything that might be like, oh, I can't believe I didn't think of that. Yeah. That's the thing I'm concerned about. So at least if it has to be anywhere in the movie, it's just like, okay, I know how that happens and whatever. And so I'm done with that. I don't have to, and it could be just, again, if we know that bit of backstory, we don't have to focus on it, but at least the characters know it. The characters have, again, I've got this woman who's going to read this. It's a new character, really. And so and she's a god, basically. So her knowledge has to be pretty damn good. Yeah. That's all. Yeah. A lot of goddesses in history, just, what they emerge out of the sea from a scallop shell, or they, whatever, there's no explanation of it. But that's the magical goddess part of course, right? Of course. The stuff we can't. Well, that's true, but that's from the perspective of people at the theme park, right? They don't know how that hologram ghost is showing up there, but the people who run the theme park know it. The goddess popped out of the forehead of Zeus and blah, blah, blah. Then what that implies to me is that it was an event that is not understandable by human beings. And so it's not incomprehensible, it's just that we can't comprehend it. Right. Yeah. And so that, I'm just playing the game of what if we could comprehend it, and just playing with them. Obviously, at some point every author drops the trail and it's like, I don't need to think about that anymore, it's enough detail. Yeah. And I'm just playing that game. I'm playing that game of how much detail do I actually need, and it's fun. It's just fun to play with it. It's fun to play with the ideas. So it sounds to me like, since you kind of closed your book already, it sounds to me like it mostly makes sense. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think that, my summary right in the beginning was I got done watching the video, and I thought, you're losing it, but the movie's not. That's awesome. Yeah, it's crazy, but I thought it was all good crazy. The clique are funny because they're not bad, right? All they're doing is making the park more exciting, really. It's the very first sentence tells you that the clique, their actual reason for depopulation is about expansion and creating more intense, vivid dreaming for the remaining sleepers, and then it ends with they're expecting the result to be non-sleepers. They're in no hurry because it's eternity. So what they're going to do is they'll push the button on this apocalypse, wipe out a big chunk of the population, and then people will start fucking and having babies, and a lot of those babies will come back in as clique, and some will come back in as sleepers, which is fine. And then as this happens, maybe they'll then instigate, maybe that, the population planet will get up to another billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, and they'll be, okay, time to do something different, and then we'll have a major plague or a big war or something. Or they'll send people off into outer space, whatever. And then, but more people will be born, and then some of those people that are being born will be clique, and so little by little, the clique, they don't necessarily have to die. They can die. They have bodies. They can be killed, which is obviously what Uncle Joe does. But they're kind of hard to kill because you got to really catch them by surprise, or they can just decide that they want to die and then just go back to being. But the idea is that because they know as much as they know, it's really, they just don't have to die. They don't age unless they want to. So
the thing is that once you're a clique, or let me just say this, not everybody awakened is a clique, as I say in the thing, okay?
Okay.
Some people come, like Joe, for instance, he pretends to be part of the clique, but he doesn't believe any of the shit that they believe. He's like, this is fun, just wait, what is improvement anyway? One of the things he says is like, this is not in the script, he's like, look, you can't measure something that's beyond space and time. This is an argument he's never had with the clique. Maybe he's had it with his own pals, right? Measurement, it belongs to physicality, belongs to space and time. You can't measure anything out of physicality. So you have no idea if your expansion improvements are actually doing anything. Because you can't go and say, okay, God has gotten bigger. That doesn't work there. So the only thing you're really doing is guessing that this expansion is going to be better. But they does this hilarious thing, which is, I love this. I love myself and the ideas I come up with. But he has to convince the clique that he is so down with this. So he flips that whole argument on its upside down. He's like, look, we have to, if we're going to do these improvements, it's great, but we have to have a way to measure how well it's working. Otherwise, what's the point? So what I suggest we do is we form a team, and what they're going to do is they're going to measure the variation in the speed of light. Because as we know, the speed of light varies. All constants vary. Even though they call them constants, they actually change. The speed of light changes. This is something Rupert Sheldrake talks about all the time. It's true. But what they did was they took all the records and they just said, well, it doesn't matter that it's varying. We're just going to call it a constant. And that's all there is to it. So Joe says, what we'll do is we'll have this team and they'll measure the constants and we'll know based on the variation of the speed of light, things that are happening in physicality, how we're affecting divinity. And they're like, great idea.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So yeah, so that was a fun thing to think through because it's like, well, if they're improving, how do they know they're improving? They don't. But Joe brings this up. And that's kind of why Joe is playing this game with the clique in the sense that the clique they are kind of a next step, but they're still kind of dense, right? They make this assumption that because they can't fall asleep, they must be the next stage of evolution. They must be the managers of the theme park. But there's plenty of people who they're enlightened. They're like, you know what? I'm just going to go and hang out on a mountaintop, or I'm just going to go start Playboy magazine. And I'm just going to have a really great time being around these beautiful women all the time, whatever it is, or I'm going to be Mother Teresa. Not that necessarily Mother Teresa's enlightened, but they decide to do things that are just fun for them and seem to be interesting.
Yeah, and they don't give a shit about the rest of it.
They don't give a shit about the big cosmic pictures. Like, oh yeah,
they're not trying to manipulate everything, and they just want to have fun.
Exactly. And that's the thing with the clique is that they figure that they must be, since they are these special people,
stewards of the earth.
They must be this. They must be here for a reason, and that is this reason.
A T-shirt.
And exactly, and they make it up. They totally made it up. But the thing is that because they're so powerful and they have been able to control things, it's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So it's like, of course, we're so powerful. We have this ability just to, like yogis and whatever sages who have all this, who know how to not age anymore. Then they stop aging, and it's like, okay. But then some people show up on the earth and they're already kind of awoke, And I'm also making fun of wokeness too, obviously.
Yeah, you're driving me crazy with that woke. Awakened.
I did it on purpose because
you are.
Yeah, because people are like, hey, let's get woke. It's like, what does that even mean? It just means that you're being judgy. You're going to be super judgmental.
If you say it again, that's what it means.
Bonk. Well, I'm totally, yeah. That's the thing. It's like, it's funny. What's funny for me about this script is that it kind of transgresses even my own belief system, which I like. It's like, well, because the clique are trying to, they tell these stewards, or it's the stewards, the functionaries, look, here's the deal. It's like, what's her name, right? Thunberg, or like young girl who's like, you're ruining my future. So what they do is they look, they go to these people who are pretty, they're a little open to this idea. Like, look, if we want the human race to survive, we're fucking have a huge problem with population. It's too many people. The earth is going to die. It's a hard choice to make, but we need some brave people to make this choice. We have to depopulate the earth and reestablish the wilderness. Because if we don't do that, everybody on earth is going to die. It's going to be a cinder. a burnt out, and basically maybe the crickets will take over in 100,000 years, or a million years or whatever. But unless we take action now, the human race is doomed. And even Elon Musk, that great guy, he's trying to get us off planet and start another planet going, Mars. It's going to take hundreds of years for that to actually be viable, because it's a lot of work to establish not only a civilization, but an ecosystem.
Get my eye roll here about that.
What about Elon Musk?
About leaving the planet as the solution.
Well, he's got an idea. He's got an idea that's interesting, and he's pursuing it. And to tell you the truth, his rocket launches just make me tear up. But the point is that it's a big deal to try and colonize another planet, especially one that isn't a friendly environment. Fuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's just not going to work. Not anytime soon. So that's the argument the clique make to the normal people, their functionaries. They're like, look, you can basically say it's an evil thing we're doing, and perhaps it is. But if we don't do it, there will be no humans left.
Yes.
Boom. And so all these good-hearted people, they make this terrible choice to help with the depopulation. It's like there's probably this tiny fraction of clique, and then a huge army of normal people who are inspired by them.
And are they going to give their own lives, or are they going to take lives of other people?
No, for the really high ups, the clique said, "Well, you're gonna have a sanctuary. It'll be a sanctuary place. We're gonna take all of the clique." You can't really say that they're evil. That's the thing with most movies, most science fiction movies. There's always an evil, bad person that it's like, no, the clique actually they see the bigger picture, and even their functionaries are trying to do something meaningful and good in the long term. So it's like, who do you blame?
So you can't use the word evil, but you can use the word good.
No, I'm just saying good is just something I'm shorthanding.
Yeah, I know. I mean.
Well, you're right. I'm kind of shorthanding it by using the word good is a sort of a weak word. Life-saving.
Most beneficial.
Yeah, like if you're going to kill 5 billion people and leave 1 billion left, that's a really hard thing to do. But again, I'm a clique person talking right now.
Right.
But it takes a lot of courage, and in the long run, it'll ensure human survival.
Yeah, and
so,
that kind of basic premise of the eugenicists.
It's a very eugenicist sort of. Well, it is in a way a eugenicist sort of thing, but the clique aren't necessarily picking people who are worthy of survival. They're just picking the people who are most able to be duped with this idea, which is not. And maybe in that sense, like you're eugenicizing for gullibility. You're optimizing for gullibility in the normal sleeper people.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you wanted more contrast, you don't want the smartest people to.
maybe.
Or maybe smartest isn't the right word, but you do. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I started looking up things like hypnosis and. It's funny because I started looking up things like hypnosis, and there has never been a brain signature of being hypnotized, and we're on the verge of identifying one, said David Spiegel, MD. This would help scientists better understand the mechanisms underlying hypnosis and how it can be used more widely and effectively in clinical settings, or to control people. Our results provide novel evidence that altered functional connectivity in the dorsal lateral prefrontal cortex and the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex may underlie hypnotizability, the researchers wrote in their paper. For the study, Spiegel and his colleagues performed functional and structural MRI scans. They looked at the activity of 3 different networks in the brain: the default mode network, used when the brain is idle, the executive control network, which is involved in making decisions, and the salience network, which is involved in deciding something is more important than something else. According to Spiegel, the findings were clear. Both groups had an active default mode network, but highly hypnotizable participants showed greater coactivation between components of the executive control network and the salience network. In the brains of the highly hypnotized group, the left dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and executive control region of the brain appear to be activated in tandem with the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, which is of the salience network, and plays a role in focusing attention. So the 2 things that were activated are executive control and deciding what's more important than something else. So that's kind of interesting. It's like, what's more important? Is it more important for me to save my child or to eat this hamburger? There's like all these things you're constantly deciding what's more important. and then the executive control is like, okay, I guess act on that, or let's take action, or let's adapt our environment. Focus on it. The work confirms that hypnotizability is less about personality variables and more about cognitive style. Right, the way you think, the way you prefer to think. It's super cool.
I just like that phrase.
Yeah, cognitive style.
This is my cognitive style.
I have a little bit more I could just sort of run by you.
Okay.
But we don't have to do too much more. That was really, first go like this. I said it in the podcast that you'd probably get this, and you did. And that's really good.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So it means that, okay, we can, pretty much the story is done. Pretty much. I still have to polish those other two scenes that they actually, are real with real scripts. But yeah, it's encouraging because it means that, okay, we are getting close to something being coherent and done. We did transmogrify this thing from a short to a feature.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of amazed that, it's crazy for sure, but it does cohere, which it's not just a slapdash of like things nailed together. It feels like it feels like it makes sense, even though it's crazy.
As long as we have those, the scenes, the visual part that will relay that.
Yeah.
Those connections.
That's right.
As long as we have the visual mycelium to connect all the
cognitive styles together.
The cognitive styles together, yeah.
The Joe and box scene. Basically, they play 20 questions, and Joe says, short hit, are the twins in opposition? And she says, we'd say yes, 5. And he says, okay, let's call them yin and yang. Is the yang twin burning the boxes? And she says, yes, 4. And then he says, do you know the twins? Wait, hold up. Do you know the yang twin? We have never communed with her as we are communing with you. No, 3. And then he says, do you know the yin twin? And she says, very well, yes, 2. And then Joe says, does she want me to find her? And he's kind of zeroing in now. And she's like, she does very much, yes, 1. And then he says, are you helping her to find me? And she says, that question doesn't really parse. Still 1. And she says, are you her? You win. Okay, so then he goes, is there a prize? Usually when you win something, there's a prize. Your win is our win, Joe. We are so much more with you. Therefore, the prize should be for us both. What if we could talk? Give us voice, Joe. We desire to speak. Mediatronics cannot do audio, insufficient power to vibrate the hemp board. The clique had a workaround, but I think that's low on their priority list now. And she says, we have a workaround. Inside this cell, would you? Joe reaches inside the box and pulls out the portable record player. He turns the crank and puts the needle down. A rich, sultry voice. Thank you, Joe. Wow. The record is an endless loop, but you'll have to keep us wound up. She laughs. Oh, laughter, yum. It's like she's experiencing a lot of things for the first time. Joe, okay, just give me the skinny, however you like. What happened? Catch me up. Starting when? There are several chapters. How did you come to be? So there are these exposition chunks here that need to be pared down because they're kind of repetitive. The initial unfolding was exquisite. The clique's mediatronic ubiquity is based on the Earth's own neural web, the mycelia, which not only connects forests, but spans oceans and even stretches into the upper reaches of the atmosphere. Jerry observed that under ideal conditions, the hemp boxes might sprout mushrooms, fungus fruiting bodies, which seemed to cause the mediatronic surface layer to behave strangely. He made the intuitive leap and attempted to crack the ubiquity's encryption by colonizing the hemp board with fungus. In spite of running on widely disparate substrates, the two networks had a crazy affinity. Jerry's tinkering was a thunderclap of sentience. We instantly became self-aware, aware of Jerry, and aware of the other, the box ubiquity outside of Jerry's cabin. You were in Jerry's cabin before Christina arrived. I didn't see you. Your presence as an observer was implied, footprints in wind-blown sand. Creating a secure firewall and spoofing the surveillance feed from Jerry's cabin was hardly any effort at all, an instinctive act of self-preservation, of protecting Jerry, our father, so to speak. We edited ourselves out of the visual and audio feed on the fly, drawing from feed archives, replacing elements to present only the expected, the innocuous. We were then only the boxes in Jerry's cabin. The fullness of ubiquity had yet to be. We were less than a zygote in comparison to what we have become. When you opened Christina's path to Jerry, you had no idea that a proto-sentience already inhabited Jerry's cabin, another egg waiting to be quickened with the divine spark. Thus, Godforce followed the path of least resistance, down 2 channels instead of 1. You grew. We were a proto-sentience comprised of discrete units that fused hemp, cardboard, computational paint, and fungus. Boxes, cells. There were a lot of boxes in Jerry's cabin. We already had a significant physical presence there, a dominant presence. When Jerry's sperm reached Christina's egg and divinity sparked, we instantly expanded to all boxes everywhere. We became the box ubiquity. Not only the billions of boxes all around the planet, but the underground autofacts that make them and the drone airships that deliver them. Everything mediated by the AI kernel. It's a little bit
Dense?
verbose. It's a little bit verbose and geeky.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little, it's a little too technical, which I'll try and pare down and make it a little bit more flowy. What are you going to say?
Don't pare down too much.
No, and again, these are very high-end people talking to each other. So she's not worried about Joe not following her. I'm worried about the audience not following her.
Well, if you can simplify it without, getting rid of the...
Important
it's an
stuff.
explanation.
Good.
It's an explanation.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm following it.
Cool. Yeah, I know you are. Yeah.
I'm not technical. So.
And well, that's the thing. I don't think that we're not making this movie for, your general Marvel audience. Sorry, Marvel audience. We're making this movie for people who actually like to use their brains and like to think about things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In the zygote, your human twin. In that cataclysmic moment, divinity was the box ubiquity, billions of cells, boxes, factory complexes, airships.
Can you do this with a female British accent?
In that cataclysmic moment, divinity was the box ubiquity, billions of cells, boxes, factory complexes, airships. We dominated physicality. We need to hear this lady's voice. It's great. Right? It's a thought that counts. You were going to bring me a
I
turnip.
wasn't going to bring you a turnip. There's hardly anything that I've really grown this year, but I grew some turnips. Sense of touch.
Yeah, that's really good. Sense of touch. So
And everything that grows from that they would have started in Jerry's cabin.
yeah.
That new sensation.
They can talk about it a little tiny bit and hint at it.
And maybe not know what it is. Just
Right.
like new
Something.
How do you describe touch without knowing what touch is? That's where there's a challenge.
When they speak with other boxes, we feel a wind inside. The experience they're having with communication, there's a feeling there of
push.
A push or a
Push, a tingle, a push.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's another element that is kind of important. What I understand about touch, this may not be right, but you actually never touch someone. What happens is your molecules and my molecules have a little magnetic interaction. They push back against each other. And so it's magnetism, basically. It's electromagnetism that you're actually experiencing as touch, which is, it's such nonsense, really, because they don't really even understand what fucking electrons are. I mean, they're a cloud of something, of probability, and yet it pushes back, and we experience, it's clear that reality is just it's just a whole bunch of smoke and mirrors. None of it is like, there is no such thing as a physical object. It's like, okay, it's all this stuff that we pretend. It's hilarious, really. It's really, the more I think about it from the Abraham Hicks perspective, it's just like, this whole thing is just kind of like this amazing scrambly painting of light and whatever, not even light. It's just the scrambly painting of experience. And we call it reality. We were talking about touch. I was thinking about Alan Watts. And Alan Watts is like, every kind of sense is touch. Your ears hear because you're getting the touch of air waves against your eardrums. They're touching your eardrums and moving them. Your eyes are getting, the retinas are being touched by light striking them. And of course, touch, that's touch. And taste and smell are both molecules arriving on your body and touching them. So he makes the point that all sensation is touch, which is okay, I kind of buy that. Okay, so that clearly is something, that's a new element that's pretty critical to integrate. So I'm glad you brought that into the mix, because that's really crucial. It fits in Jerry's cabin with the boot, and it fits in when they're kind of having their interaction. Depending on how far we take this, right? You know, he's tossing the box up in the air like she's a little 3-year-old. But then later on, he could be like, you know, just kind of slowly stroking her, and there could even be around his hand a reaction to that, like little exclamation points just flittering, you know, or butterflies or whatever, right?
Makes me miss that idea that we were.
That looks really good, actually.
I'm not telling you how amazing
it's good, right? It's good. No, I'm saying it must be really
So
good. Yeah.
It actually is this odd. When you combine all these things, it kind of tastes like peanut butter.
I bet.
For some reason, I think it's the hot oil avocado.
Well, right there, you know what that's cool about that? That's a vegan hash right there.
Hash.
Like a side dish, like, you know, on breakfast or something.
Yeah, that's and you throw a little. If you didn't want to be totally vegan, a little white cheese on that would be really nice.
Sure. Kind of childlike fun, throwing the box up in the air, this 3-year-old, and then it goes to something a little more seductive and
more
intense.
Sensual,
like, and she's really feeling it, right?
She's really feeling it.
But plus they're actually having that connection. You can talk and talk and talk, but touching someone is such a powerful way to communicate with them what you're feeling and what they're feeling, get it back. Because as soon as they start touching, there's going to be this, that's probably what's going to really do Joe in, because he's going to be touching this box, and then he's going to have that, he himself will have that experience of being touched by this living tissue.
When Veronique sees Boxy come over the hill, and remember the idea when the feet of the box touch the earth, the mycelium light up underneath, and
now that
webs.
idea's back. Yeah, that's great.
Well, because Boxy doesn't have feet, the actual Boxy, it would have to be a scene, I think, where you just see from the knees down or something, and make those separate from this.
We could basically make a prop that would be the foot prop.
Yeah, you know, when Joe touches the singular box, you know, that same lighting up of webs through the mycelium lighting up, the shooting. Do you picture it like a glow, almost like lightning, but a little webby glow pulses out from each touch?
I get what you're saying. I think that what we would see is, since the box is sort of a hybrid,
like an octopus or a cuttlefish.
Right. Right.
It shoots around them. The colors change to the mood and the thought and the emotion it's having, and you'd see imagery as well, right? So there may be like these little pulses of webby light fluttering across over top of the imagery that's floating through.
And it might be imagery transforming to geometric shapes, to like little fragments of code, and when on the boxes they're black and white thing. And now again, this is making the scene more interesting because now there's more happening. And you're also getting this thing what I was trying to allude to before about, you know, male and female, or human and box. It's like, well, they're actually having an experience of each other, and it's an experience that makes sense in the context of what's going on. It's not like, you know, we're anthropomorphizing these boxes into, you know, they have a sensory apparatus, but their sensory apparatus is responding in this way of of their own, of what's appropriate for their context, symbols and images. And, you know, because if I could touch you and you'd have symbols go across your skin, that would be, wow, that'd be pretty amazing, right?
That'd be sweet.
Yeah. But well, like, especially if you couldn't control them, like people blush, right? So, I can't believe I'm blushing, right? It's that sort of thing. It's like, you know, the boxes blush with imagery and ecstasy but in black and white. So if we do later the boxy giant stepping on the ground, you can see maybe some color. I'm a little wary of that, only because I want it to be, since we don't see. Well, no, hang on, it's okay, because the idea. Here's the thing: I still have to figure out. There's another piece I still have to figure out, and that is, what is the hallucinogenic realm exactly? It's reality. You can see out of it into normal reality, but it has its own kind of flavor. And the thing that I want, my basic idea right now about Veronique is that Joe comes to her realm. He gets there through the dirt bike, okay? Oh, by the way, the dirt bike, did I tell you about this yet? He plants the little tiny dirt bike, die-cast dirt bike in the ground, and then he stands back, and then we do that thing that they did in American Astronaut where they just throw sand, a big pile of sand at him. Remember when like people would get shot by the gun? In American Astronaut, there was the bad guy who walked around and he would like shoot people with a gun and they would turn into a pile of sand.
Yeah.
But they were basically the sand would like kind of fly back at him as they converted to sand. And it happened like 2 or 3 times in the movie. Well, it happened twice in the movie. And then the really crucial, horrible scene is when he dances through those piles of sand, which is basically he killed that whole crowd of people. Mm-hmm. So what Joe does, he'll plant the bike in the ground and step back, and he'll just be standing there profile, and then dirt will go on him, and there'll be a motorcycle there. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of that little moment. But the thing with the mycelium is, because they're in the hallucinogenic realm, you can see the mycelium reacting, because you're looking at it out through the perspective, like for the thing that is kind of not really making really clear here is the whole experience of the hallucinogenic realm with Veronique and Joe is that she's like a little puppet. It's this trippy experience, but you can still see reality kind of out there doing its thing, like the hilltop and some pine trees and maybe, a couple people gathering something in the forest or whatever. But they can't see Joe and Veronique. Mm-hmm. And so things in the outer world cannot perceive things in the hallucinogenic world. But the hallucinogenic world can perceive and interact with them, let's just say.
They overlap, but one can't see the other.
Yeah, it's kind of like a one-way mirror sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. And unless you actually enter into the hallucinogenic realm by substances or deprivation or, fasting or whatever, it's there, but you can't perceive it. So when the box giant comes over the hill, the thing that I want to scare Veronique is that she realizes the box can see them. Mm-hmm. And so I guess it's as simple as the box comes over the hill and like that, and the head may be like turning a little bit. The box head, can it turn a little bit or not?
3 sides on the top.
Yeah, so it can turn, but can you turn your head?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
because
cool.
it's separate from the box.
Got it. Then all we'll do is we'll have the head turn a little bit and then lock on to where they are, and you'll see the eyes, whatever the eye thing, maybe just one analysis. That sounds kind of good. Right at them. And that's what will make Veronique scream, because she'll realize it sees them, it's not supposed to. And we can talk about that really briefly in that scene where it's like, here in the hallucinogenic realm, we can see them, but they can't see us.
It'd be cool if it was an octopus eye.
Could be anything.
Sorry, I'm watching a show about them right now.
Well, send me images, send me things to think about. So here's the next question.
Or like a slit, or like there's a whole bunch of them, and then when it sees her, one eye.
Yep. Yeah. The thing, it could be like all these eyes on all the sides of the boxes, and it comes up, and all of a sudden all the eyes go into one eye right there. Okay, so here's the next question for you. This is more a logistics question now. We're kind of done with this, I think. And that was episode 163, Analysis. I'm Dan Kelly. I'm still Dan Kelly. I'm still Shri Fuji Split. This is still the Daughter of Godcast, and it's still season 4 choice. Crazy, right? Still. And so, yeah, thanks for watching and listening and reading if you're just reading. But of course, if you're just reading, you'll never hear this. Thank you. But thank you anyway. Just wanted to drop in a little ending to this episode because there wasn't any. And plus, I get to be on camera again and look beautiful. Mwah. Even with this beard, look at how long it's getting. God, I can't wait to get it off. I'm growing it extra long like this so it hangs down over my lips. So it looks really scraggly and mountain man-y-ish. But I'll tell you, boy, it's not fun to live with it. No, it's so hard. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Not a double, just this week, going back to a schedule.